The story starts with a boy named Arga reflects on the turning point in his life. He remembers the moment he discovered his innate ability and realized he was no longer the weakest among adventurers. Once looked down upon as the bottom of the barrel, he knew from that day forward that he had stopped beyond being merely human. Later, at the guild, the usual long line of adventurers forms. As Arga waits patiently, a bigger man deliberately slips in front of him. Annoyed, Arga tells him to return to his place, but the man mocks him, acting as if he hadn't even noticed him standing there. He laughs that Arga is too small and insignificant to be seen, brushing him aside as if he were nothing. Arga refuses to let it slide, which quickly angers the man. The adventurer, boasting about his higher rank, makes it clear he finds it insulting to be corrected by someone like Arga. He throws harsh words at him, belittling him and reminding him of his lowly status. The confrontation is interrupted when the guildmaster steps forward. His presence immediately shifts the mood as he firmly declares that cutting the line is unacceptable. The man who tried to push past Arga instantly changes his tone, stumbling over his words and trying to excuse himself. The guildmaster, however, doesn't let it pass so easily. He reminds Arga that in situations like this, he should bring the matter directly to the staff rather than confronting it himself. Arga acknowledges this, while the other adventurer, embarrassed, mutters an apology. As the tension dies down, the guildmaster sighs. He warns that arrogance and failing to know one's place can lead to consequences, even demotion. Yet as he looks at Arga, his tone softens, as if this day feels different to him. Arga reflects that waiting in line wasn't a problem since he had free time. When he finally reaches the counter, he reports that he is leaving Kanato's party. The staff member is surprised, but Arga brushes it off lightly, saying it's something they could have expected. The scene then shifts to earlier that day. Kanato, surrounded by his companions, suddenly declares that Arga is being cast out of the group. Arga, confused, asks why, and the party quickly gives their reasons. They point out that he is a Tamer, mocking him as someone who is slow to grow and only capable of forming bonds with monsters. They argue that because he shares experience points with his companions, his progress has stalled, leaving him stuck at E rank while everyone else has advanced. To them, without monsters, Arga has no real strength. Arga tries to remind them that when he joined, they had already discussed this issue and agreed it was acceptable. But Kanato dismisses his protest, making it clear that it no longer matters. Arga reminds the group that they had been together for 2 years, but Kanato dismisses the point, saying that someone who only drags the party down cannot truly be considered a companion. The others laugh at him, mocking him as dead weight. Arga reflects that because of this treatment, he now has plenty of free time. At the guild, the staff notices his adventurer card hasn't been updated in 2 years. They offer to update it, and Arga, with nothing else pressing since his banishment, accepts. When they bring out a crystal device, he is confused at first, but they explain it is a newly introduced status checker that reads a person's information directly, replacing the old written application system that was often falsified. Though reluctant, Arga eventually places his hand on the crystal. It glows and transfers his details onto the card. The staff begins reading his status, his name, age, race, and rank. His occupation shows as Tamer, but another word also appears, fusionist. The staff stares at the result in disbelief, assuming the device must be malfunctioning. The staff carefully examines the crystal and concludes the reading is correct, showing both Tamer and fusionist as Arga's occupations. Though unsure what fusionist means, he insists the result isn't an error. Arga is stunned, realizing this means he has 2 occupations. The staff explains that while people almost always have only one job, on very rare occasions, a person may possess 2, something known as a second job. Arga grows excited, thinking this might completely change his situation, and even imagining he could be a prodigy. The staff notes that the occurrence of a second job is so rare, it happens only once in 1,000 years. Arga then asks about the meaning of fusionist. The staff admits they have never heard of it, but based on the name, they assume it must involve combining or crossbreeding monsters. Arga's enthusiasm quickly fades. He points out that this sounds like something ordinary Tamers can already do, leaving him disappointed after believing it was such a rare ability. The staff hesitates, and looks at him with confusion as to why he thinks anyone should be able to be a tamer and fusionist at the same time. Arga moves to an open area with a sheet in hand and calls out his companions. A baby dragon, a small wolf, and a slime appear. He checks their status and sees that their stats are still poor. The dragon and wolf are both at level 10 with low attack and defense, while the slime is at level 15 but still weak. He decides they will be used as the foundation for his fusion attempt, choosing to start with the baby dragon and planning to combine it with a bat. At the guild, the staff discuss the abilities of tamers. They explain that tamers are limited to commanding monsters and cannot create new ones through crossbreeding. They question how Arga came to believe otherwise. Arga responds by saying he thought it was normal, since for him, it had always been something he naturally did. Arga thinks about how he never attended school and had to teach himself everything. He admits to himself that he doesn't even know other tamers, which makes him realize just how isolated he is. Remembering his banishment and lack of friends, he feels the weight of his situation, but quickly shifts his focus back to trying fusion. He chooses the baby dragon and a bat as his test subjects and activates his fusion ability. The process completes, and the baby dragon's wings change slightly in shape and color. Arga checks the results and sees that while its overall stats have decreased, it has also gained a new skill from the bat, giving it more strength in a different way. Feeling encouraged, Arga tells himself that as a fusionist, he can make his companions stronger. Holding the baby dragon in his hands, he feels proud of the result and thinks his monsters are fortunate to share this ability with him. Arga thinks about how his companions can continue to grow stronger through fusion, but he himself remains weak. Even though he is considered a rare talent, he feels unworthy of that title and admits he wants to become strong as well. Remembering the party that cast him out, anger rises in him. He imagines showing them his true strength. The word fusion lingers in his mind as he considers a new possibility. Since humans and monsters are almost identical in both magical and biological structure, he wonders if the two could also be fused together. The thought shocks him, but he questions whether he should attempt it. He realizes the risk. If he fails, he could die, or even worse, become a chimera. But if he succeeds, he could gain the powers of monsters and finally achieve the strength he desires. Fixing his eyes on a lesser arachne, he debates the choice, then decides to go through with it, telling himself that even he could be strong this way. He activates his mixed fusion art and initiates the fusion. After the fusion attempt, Arga collapses to the ground, gasping for breath. As he steadies himself, he realizes that he survived. Checking over his body, he notices nothing unusual and convinces himself that the attempt was a success. Then, something unexpected happens. A status window appears before him, something that should only belong to monsters. Confused, he studies it more closely and discovers the truth. His race has changed. He has become a demon human. Laughing nervously, Arga processes what this means. The transformation has granted him the ability to use a status screen, something humans should not have. Coming to terms with it, he reflects with shock that he has apparently stopped being human. At the Adventurers Guild, Arga browses the request board and chooses a job. The guild staff informs him that it is a goblin extermination mission in the Northern Plains. They mention that the work is simple and the reward is small, but Arga responds that he is mainly interested in testing his strength, so the details do not matter. While handling the request, the staff notices that Arga looks taller than before and questions it. Arga explains that he feels as though he has been reborn and suggests that the physical changes are just the start of something new. With confidence, he announces his departure for the mission. As he leaves, the staff comment among themselves. They agree that something about him seems different. The guildmaster thinks he may just want a fresh start, while she points out that although he claimed to be reborn, he still accepted such a low-paying task, and wonder why he would choose goblin extermination when it is clearly work meant for beginners. At the guild, staff members quietly wonder if Arga will be alright, since the Northern Plains are known to be dangerous at the moment. Out on the plains, Arga arrives with his companions. He tells himself that this will be a good chance to test their strength after fusion, and afterward, he will measure his own power as well. When he checks his status, he realizes just how much has changed. His life force and magic power have multiplied several times over, and his attack power has risen drastically. He acknowledges that becoming a demon human has altered many things, and leveling up should now be much faster. He notices one new ability in particular: the power to produce spider silk, gained from fusing with a spider-type monster. He reflects on how useful this may become. Soon after, he and his companions encounter some ugly goblins who spot them immediately. Arga directs his monsters to attack. The baby dragon unleashes the ultrasonic wave it learned through bat fusion, and the effect is strong. Arga is satisfied with the result, thinking the fusion skill is proving its worth. With confidence building, he urges his team forward, and together they charge into battle against the goblins. Arga checks his status, and sees that both his attack and agility have risen to incredible levels. He realizes his power now rivals A rank and might even approach S rank, making him believe he could truly become the strongest. A deafening roar suddenly shakes the plains, and when Arga turns, he is confronted by the massive figure of a sword bear. The overwhelming sight leaves him momentarily stunned. At the guild, staff discuss recent reports. They confirm that sword bear sightings have been happening often in the northern plains. Although officially listed as C rank, they point out that its attack power alone is equal to A rank, and its claws are as sharp as blades. With concern, they note that Arga is only registered as E rank, and conclude that if he encounters the sword bear, his life will be in danger. Back in the plains, Arga steadies himself as he faces the beast. He acknowledges its power, but reminds himself that becoming a demon human has boosted his abilities and maximized his companion art. He even considers the possibility of taming it. Still, he orders his companions to hold back, determined to confront the monster on his own. Arga charges at the sword bear, resolved to take it down. He thinks about how much experience defeating a monster of this level would give him, enough to raise his strength all at once. He attacks with his knife, but realizes immediately that its hide is far too tough. The sword bear counters with incredible speed, forcing him to retreat. Arga acknowledges that his knife won't work and considers whether even using his fists would make any difference, but the beast's sharp body makes that impossible. Remembering the ability he gained from fusing with a spider, Arga uses his silk threads to form gloves from spider silk and prepares for close combat. With his fists protected, he charges the sword bear and strikes, convincing himself that its tough armor is no longer something to fear. Blow after blow lands as the monster counters fiercely, but Arga refuses to back down. At last, his strength overwhelms it, and the sword bear falls. Breathing hard, Arga stares at the defeated creature, stunned that he has managed to bring down a C-rank monster on his own. Relief shifts into determination. He tells himself that he needs to grow even stronger, strong enough that Kanato and the others who abandoned him will one day regret their choice. Arga accepts a new request at the guild, confident it will be completed quickly. The staff remind him to be cautious as he departs. Observing him closely, they remark on how much he has changed. His body and movements look sharper, his vision and agility seem heightened, and from a glance alone he appears to be operating at a higher level than before. Checking the records, they notice he repeatedly selects horn rabbit exterminations, often several times a day. They discuss how such simple tasks normally wouldn't lead to rapid growth, and one suggests it might just be the guildmaster's imagination. Meanwhile, Arga looks at the request himself and thinks differently. Instead of treating horn rabbits only as extermination targets, he decides to tame one, believing it could prove useful for fusion. Just as he prepares to leave, someone calls out to stop him, and he turns back, asking if they need something. Arga is stopped by two adventurers, Razul and Norshi, who quickly recognize him as the Tamer once banished from Kanato's party. They proudly declare their admiration for Kanato, praising him as a prodigy who reached S rank at 18, and admit they want to join his group. They express anger that someone like Arga had been allowed to stay in the party for 2 years. Their irritation grows when they see Arga's calm expression. They accuse him of being arrogant for smiling and insist that he should be remorseful, reflecting on the trouble he caused for Kanato. Arga, however, dismisses their words. He makes it clear that jealousy doesn't concern him anymore and that he has no reason to feel regret. Instead, he argues that Kanato should be the one reflecting, calling him trash for forcing him into the party and abandoning him so easily. His words infuriate the two, who erupt in anger at his insult toward the man they idolize. Razul and Norshi lose their tempers, furious that Arga acts unfazed. They claim he's insulting B ranks and pull out their weapons, swearing to put him in his place. The guild staff grow alarmed, but the guildmaster decides to wait and watch, wanting to see how strong Arga really is. The two men rush him, attacking with full force. Arga meets them head-on, moving faster and sharper than they expected. In a single exchange, he pushes them back with ease, leaving both shocked at his strength. Unbothered, Arga points out that drawing weapons inside the guild breaks the rules. His words only deepen their embarrassment. Unable to recover their pride, Razul and Norshi pushed back in frustration. Onlookers whisper at how pathetic it looks for two B ranks to be beaten and scolded by the very E rank they once ridiculed. Razul and Norshi rush in, but Arga immediately senses something unnatural about their movements. For B ranks, they seem far too slow, almost as if they're pretending. He recalls how earlier they had stumbled too easily, and the thought occurs that this might be a deliberate ploy. Rather than rush blindly, Arga chooses to play along. He acts uncertain, letting them believe he's confused. As expected, one of them drops his guard, and Arga takes advantage, striking him hard and sending him flying. Arga suspects this is another setup, but instead of retreating, he steadies himself. He decides to confront the trick directly, determined to expose whatever scheme they're hiding. Arga tried to continue the fight, but the guildmaster stepped in, stopping him before things escalated further. Arga protested, saying his opponents still seemed to have something planned, but the master explained that both Razul and Norshi were already unable to fight. He pointed out that Arga's perception hadn't caught up to his growth. There was no way seasoned B ranks could appear that weak unless Arga had surpassed them. Those watching murmured among themselves, realizing that Arga had managed to defeat two near A rank fighters without even summoning his monsters. The guildmaster told him to show restraint from now on, since his strength had risen far beyond his old E rank. Arga reluctantly agreed, though the word restraint lingered in his mind as he left. For the first time, he realized he had grown strong enough that others now expected him to hold back. The thought left him unsettled, yet it confirmed how much he had changed. The guild staff noted how unusual it was that Arga's strength had grown so quickly. One of them admitted they had no clear answer, while another decided to look into him further, suspecting his sudden growth might be tied to the concept of a second job. Their attention was soon drawn to a newcomer. The guild members were struck by her presence, first remarking on her beauty, and then realizing with shock who she was. It was Cicel Le Cerciel, humanity's strongest warrior and an SSS rank adventurer. She stepped forward with calm confidence, asking to hear more about the man they had mentioned earlier. The boy scrambles through the dungeon, nearly getting caught by a giant centipede. Shaken, he mutters to himself that the route is no longer safe, and vents frustration toward Kanato for leaving him in such danger. As he steadies himself, a girl suddenly appears, noticing his mention of Kanato. Startled, he demands to know why she's alone here, and she calmly explains that she's searching for Kanato's party because she has something important to ask them. The boy recalls bitterly how he was abandoned by his group, called useless, and dismissed from his role as a tamer. He explains that he had no choice but to struggle toward the exit by himself. The girl listens, then identifies herself as Kanato's new tamer, and asks for information about the one she replaced, Arga. Hearing Arga's name, the boy admits he was often compared to him. He explains that others frequently spoke about Arga's knowledge, which many said surpassed even Kanato's. The girl smiles knowingly and presses further, asking if he has personally heard about Arga's abilities. The group talks about the rumors of Tamer's crossbreeding monsters. Some dismiss it outright, saying no Tamer should be able to do that, while others laugh that hiring someone weaker than Arga shows how low the bar has fallen. Their confusion comes from having seen Arga do such things often, making them assume it was normal. The girl shows interest and asks for more details. Arga then observes his monster suddenly glow and transform after leveling up. He realizes it's the result of his own careless choices, forcing fusions between monsters that weren't compatible. The transformation produces a strange, unsettling form, which he identifies as a chimera dragon. Even though the new form looks grotesque, he admits its stats are decent, though not impressive. Taking responsibility for the outcome, he reflects on how little he had understood about how materials influenced evolution. Just then, he notices something nearby, shifting his focus. Arga arrives at the Palpari Labyrinth, recognizing it as a beginner-friendly dungeon that matches his current level of strength. Confident that it poses no real threat, he sees it as the perfect place to gather the materials needed to adjust Lala's evolution. Determined to correct the course, he pushes forward with his companions at his side. Inside, the labyrinth stirs with activity as insect-type creatures and other monsters appear. Arga keeps his focus sharp, knowing his real objective is the metal stag beetle. He signals for the weaker enemies to be pushed aside, emphasizing that the true target is this specific creature. The beetle holds both the beetle type and steel type traits, exactly what's needed to guide Lala toward a proper evolution. Arga comes across a metal stag beetle and immediately tries to tame it. He makes several attempts, but each one ends in failure. Knowing there's a limit to how many times he can try, he accepts the loss and focuses instead on the experience gained, which allows him to level up multiple times. Pushing forward, he decides to head deeper into the labyrinth for stronger opportunities. Elsewhere, Fat Arga and my Gunner Queen Cicel Le Cerciel reflect on his strange abilities. They speculate whether his monster fusions don't just change appearances, but also their strength, which could make both Arga and his companions dangerously powerful. As they ride Arga's tames and unusual talents, an ugly, massive worm creature appears out of nowhere, ready to feed on their meat-riding lives. The monstrous creature thundered forward, but Sissel stepped in without hesitation. She confirmed what she needed to see and called the moment fortunate for her. Fat Arga, terrified in his shitty pants, thanked her as she assured him he was lucky as well, since now he could leave the danger behind and return safely. She promised to escort him out. The fight ended quickly with a single swing to the face of that ugly worm's face, and the truth about Sissel became clear. She was an SSS rank adventurer, one of the strongest in existence. While Mr. Shitty Pants sat there left in awe, realizing the weight of the person who had just saved him. Later at the guild, Cecil brought up Arga. She reflected on his rare combination of being both a tamer and a fusionist, admitting it was surprising that such a person even existed. The guildmaster and others noted how Arga's abilities had grown in unusual ways, achieved largely through self-study and determination. When the subject of dragon species was mentioned, it reinforced just how remarkable his path had become. The guild members turned their attention to Arga's rumored companion. When they learned it was a baby dragon, many were surprised, since dragon species were believed to be impossible to tame. They reminded each other that dragons only acknowledge those with true talent and power, rejecting anyone else. The guildmaster admitted he hadn't yet verified the truth of the claim, but noted that if Arga really had managed it, it proved the young man's talent was exceptional. Cicel reflected on how rare it would be to combine fusion arts with a dragon, and she resolved to confirm things herself. She planned to seek out Arga's former companions to learn more about him. As she thought about his abilities, she felt that he might be the one capable of realizing her harem dream.